ESPN calling the Steelers middle linebackers. The weakest part of the team is one of those takes that sounds smart only if you stop the conversation at a PFF grade and refuse to look any deeper. Patrick Queen had a disappointing season by his own standards, and Payton Wilson was not used like a full-time centerpiece every single week, but that does not magically turn the entire room into a weakness. Queen is still a two-time Pro Bowler, a durable starter, the defensive communicator, and a player who has already proven he can be one of the better off-ball linebackers in football. The issue with Queen is not that he suddenly forgot how to play. It is not that he lacks athleticism, experience, instincts, or the ability to make plays near the line of scrimmage. His issue is effort, and he has admitted that himself. There were too many snaps where he was not flying to the football with the same urgency, too many moments where Wilson was chasing a play, expecting Queen to arrive and finish it, and too many situations where Queen looked like he was waiting for the play instead of attacking it. That is unacceptable, especially for a veteran making serious money and wearing the green dot, but it is also fixable. If Queen gives Pittsburgh 100% on every snap, this conversation changes immediately because the talent is not in question. The Steelers do not need to replace his body, his experience, or his ability. They need the most engaged version of him for 4 quarters. ESPN is taking a player who underperformed and pretending that underperformance defines his ceiling, which is lazy analysis. There is a massive difference between saying Queen has to play better and saying the entire position is the weakest group on the roster. One is a fair criticism. The other ignores everything Queen has already accomplished and everything he still brings to the defense. He can blitz, he can chase, he can communicate, he can clean up plays, and he has the range to get sideline to sideline when he is fully locked in. The Steelers also did him no favors by asking him to carry too much mental responsibility in a defense that often put linebackers in terrible spots. Queen was being asked to diagnose route combinations, communicate everything before the snap, carry players through space, fit the run, and clean up behind a defensive front that did not always keep blockers off him. Then, when the entire structure broke down, the linebacker got blamed because he was the final player on camera missing the tackle. That is not how intelligent evaluation works. You cannot constantly ask a linebacker to play in reverse, handle matchup responsibilities that do not suit him, and then wonder why he does not look like the downhill attacker he was in Baltimore. Patrick Graham has to put Queen in a role where he can trigger faster, attack gaps, pressure quarterbacks, and play aggressively instead of turning every snap into a processing exam. If that happens and Queen matches it with full effort, ESPN's claim is going to age horribly. Queen finished near the top of the team in tackles. People can criticize the contract, the missed tackles, and the bad pursuit angles without rewriting his entire career. A truly weak position is one where the coaching staff has no established starter, no leadership, no physical upside, and no realistic path toward improvement. That description does not fit Queen at all. Pittsburgh already has the player. The challenge is getting a more disciplined, relentless version of him. If he loafs, call it out. If he takes a poor angle, show it. But do not use those snaps to claim the Steelers have nothing at middle linebacker, because that is a completely different argument, and ESPN has blurred the two together. This is not a talentless linebacker trying to survive. This is a proven player who has to take accountability, play harder, and finally be used in a way that highlights what he does well instead of exposing what he does poorly. Then there is Payton Wilson, and ESPN's framing of him might be even more ridiculous because they are talking about one of the most gifted young linebackers in football as if he failed some basic audition. Wilson led the Steelers in tackles, made plays in coverage, contributed on special teams, chased runners all over the field, and showed exactly why Pittsburgh believed it found one of the steals of the draft. Yet instead of asking why a player with that range was not given a cleaner, more permanent role, the conversation became about him failing to completely push Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison out of the rotation. That says more about how the Steelers handled the position than it does about Wilson's ability. He was used as a traditional box linebacker on too many snaps, forced to deal with guards climbing directly into his chest, and shuffled through packages instead of being allowed to settle into a role built around his strengths. Wilson should be moving through space, matching tight ends, closing on running backs, spying mobile quarterbacks, attacking from different alignments, and cleaning up plays from the backside. He has already shown he can cover ground that most linebackers cannot reach. He has intercepted Lamar Jackson, made plays on the football in coverage, and chased down skill players who should have had clear angles to the end zone. That does not mean he is a finished product. He still has to become more consistent when offensive linemen reach him, take cleaner paths to the football, and avoid getting washed out of run fits. But those are developmental areas for a young player, not evidence that the room is broken. The Steelers had Quinn and Wilson operating inside a defense that frequently asked them to solve problems created elsewhere. The defensive line did not always control blockers, the spacing behind them became confused, and the coverage rules often left the linebackers carrying assignments that played directly against their best traits. When a guard gets a free release to the second level, Wilson is forced to take on a man who outweighs him by 70 pounds before he can even locate the runner. When Queen is responsible for communicating the entire picture and then carrying a receiver through space, he cannot attack downhill with the same freedom. ESPN sees the end of the play and blames the closest linebacker. A better evaluation asks why the defense kept producing those situations. Patrick Graham now has the opportunity to separate their responsibilities and make the pairing function logically. Queen can handle communication while being moved closer to the action, whereas aggression and experience have more value. Wilson can become the Rongier piece, playing in space and using his length and closing ability rather than spending the afternoon wrestling with guards. They should complement each other instead of being forced into interchangeable jobs. Pittsburgh also has depth behind them. Holcomb has starting experience, and Harrison provides a heavier option against physical rushing attacks, and Carson Bruner has already established himself as a legitimate special teams contributor. That is not a barren position group. It is a room with two starting caliber players, veteran insurance, and a developmental piece. Pittsburgh is not searching for talent at linebacker. It is searching for the correct arrangement. There is a difference, and ESPN either missed it or ignored it because weakest position creates a cleaner headline than explaining how scheme, effort, defensive line play, and role definition all contributed to the results. Wilson did not need to be rescued from the field last season. He needed to be trusted, coached with intention, and placed in situations where his athletic profile could influence the game. If Graham gets that right, Wilson has the ability to become one of the breakout players on this defense, and suddenly the supposedly weakest position could become one of its most dynamic. And if ESPN genuinely wanted to identify the weakest spot on the Steelers, it should have looked a few yards behind Queen and Wilson, because free safety is the position with the real unanswered question. Pittsburgh has quality safeties, but having several good players at one general position does not mean every role is covered. Deshaun Elliott is one of the better strong safeties in football when he is allowed to play near the line of scrimmage, support the run, cover underneath areas, and bring a physical presence into the box. Jaquan Brisker fits a similar profile. He is aggressive, comfortable around contact, and dangerous when he can move forward rather than spending the entire game protecting deep grass. Those are valuable players, but they are not natural center field free safeties. The Steelers have strength at strong safety and uncertainty at free safety, and pretending those jobs are interchangeable is exactly how defenses give up explosive plays. Right now, there's no proven player on the roster who naturally replaces that exact function on a full-time basis. Jalen Ramsey can absolutely line up there. He showed that he can process the field, communicate, disguise coverage, and make plays from depth, but Ramsey's versatility is the reason you do not want to chain him to one spot for an entire season. He is still capable of matching receivers outside, playing in the slot, moving around based on the opponent, and creating confusion because the quarterback cannot identify his assignment before the snap. Turning him into a permanent free safety would solve one problem by reducing what makes him special. He may play there in certain packages, close games there, or handle the role against specific opponents, but he is not going to spend every defensive snap as Pittsburgh's full-time center fielder, and that means the Steelers still have to find an answer. Maybe Darnell Savage earns the job. Maybe Robert Spears Jennings develops faster than expected. Maybe Graham rotates responsibilities and builds the coverage structure around several players instead of relying on one traditional free safety. That is what an actual roster weakness looks like, a role without a confirmed long-term owner. At inside linebacker, Pittsburgh knows Queen and Wilson will be central pieces. The questions are whether Queen's effort becomes consistent, whether Wilson receives a role suited to him, and whether the new staff can organize their responsibilities more intelligently. At free safety, the question starts much earlier. Who is actually playing the position when Ramsey moves to corner, Elliott drops into the box, and Brisker is used as the physical strong safety he naturally is? ESPN is worried about a linebacker room with a two-time Pro Bowler and one of the most athletic young defenders on the team, while Pittsburgh is still trying to determine who will perform one of the most important jobs in the secondary. That makes no sense. Criticize Queen's effort because it deserves criticism. Challenge Wilson to become stronger and more consistent against the run. Demand that Graham use both players better than the previous defense did, but stop acting like the Steelers are entering the season with nothing in the middle. The talent is sitting directly in front of them, and the path toward improvement is clear. Free safety is different. Pittsburgh has strong safeties, versatile defensive backs, and several possible combinations, but it does not currently have a Minka-style answer ready to own the deep middle every week. Until somebody claims that responsibility, that is the position opponents will test and the area the Steelers will have to protect through scheme. ESPN identified the wrong weakness because it evaluated names and grades without examining roles. The linebackers were misused and inconsistent. The free safety job is unresolved. Those are not the same problem, and only one of them leaves Pittsburgh without a clear answer entering the season.